be specific about, what educators and administrators did to create that environment and how these new policies would be chipping away at that. And then mention how your experience overlaps with multiple marginalized identities, if you would like. And then, if you write a short comment or a long comment, regardless of which one it is, you want to make sure that one of the first and or last things you say, or both, is that you oppose the policy and you would like the VDOE to reject it, just to drive that point home. Marissa, did you want to go in here with the superintendent's comments?
Yeah, so thank you, Kylie. It's super important to say that you oppose the policy and reject it. As we said, we're seeing sort of like historic turnout for submitting public comment, both in opposition and in support of the policy. And I think, I think a lot of us would say, hey, if there's overwhelming opposition to, the policy, that is sending a message that Virginia and the community here do not want, are not in support of it and do not want it adopted. Unfortunately, that's sort of not the angle that the state superintendent of public instruction, Jillian Balow, and the VDOE is going to take. They are going to, filter everything and sort them and by opposition and support. But they're not going to sort of use that count on as a referendum on the policy's popularity. So, say 30,000 comments submitted, 20,000 in opposition, 10,000 in support. She has said that that doesn't necessarily mean that, the policy is not popular or shouldn't be adopted. State law does require the proposal to go through a 30-day comment period. And so what the VDOE and the state superintendent, who is sort of the final person that's going to say, these are the changes we want to make to the policy. This is the policy that we're going to send down to school boards. They are really wanting to see substantive comments about, what about the policy are you in opposition against, and what would you want it changed to? And so this is really sort of an opportunity to say more than you just oppose it, though we completely understand if just saying you oppose it is what makes you feel the most comfortable. We're hoping that what we give you here today allows you to submit a more substantive comment if you would like. But we recognize that, we don't always have the time or place to do that. We just want to make sure folks are aware that this is what the state superintendent is going to be looking at and the VDOE as a whole. But we'll go into some messaging right now. I put in the chat the link to our guide. We'll be updating this weekly as we develop more talking points and as we sort of hear more from the VDOE and the state superintendent about what they're looking for. We want to make sure that we're giving you all the best tools and resources that you have to be empowered. Again, there's this 30-day period to submit comment. You don't need to feel like you need to submit one in the first week or anything like that. There's no gauge on a comment submitted earlier has more weight over one submitted the last day. Submit a comment when you feel comfortable and confident in the comment that you've drafted. We know from last year, a majority of the comments came in sort of like the first couple of days. Then there was a quiet and lull period, and then a lot more came in sort of the last 2 to 3 days before the town hall page closed. So again, go at this at your own pace. This isn't a race or anything. Okay, next slide.
Yeah, thanks, Marissa. So we have a sample comment here. This is actually a spoken comment that was given at the rally that we hosted with a couple community partners this past weekend, right before Virginia Pride. So this is a father of a non-binary student in Hanover named Chris, who spoke this comment out loud, but we really liked it, and we thought that, this comment could serve well as a written comment as well. So this is just an example. So Chris says, I'm the father of a non-binary student in Hanover, and who my child is wouldn't change if I refused to acknowledge them. Redefining words to bend their meaning wouldn't change who my child is. This policy was intentionally written to ignore me, ignore my child, but most importantly, it was written to ignore their friends who aren't ready to come out to their families or whose families are unsupportive. So Chris brought in that point that we mentioned on one of the previous slides about the forced outing piece and how dangerous that is. And if this policy were really about parental rights, I would be able to request that the school address my child as they, them, instead of just male or female. If this policy were really about parental rights, we wouldn't be required to provide legal documents just to have our children addressed by their chosen name at school. Continuing the comment, if this policy were really about freedom of speech, supportive teachers wouldn't be forced to ignore a student's chosen name or their gender just because of what their birth certificate says. If this policy were really about freedom of religion, it wouldn't ignore those whose religion calls on them to treat others with compassion instead of disrespect. Another thing we sometimes suggest is bringing in different values, and religious values is one of those things that you can bring into your comment if you feel called to do so, like Chris did here. And if this policy were really about all students, it wouldn't exclude the most vulnerable students. And if this policy were really about preventing bullying, it wouldn't devote almost every legal argument to legitimizing unsupportive parents and bigotry. If this policy were really about the truth, it wouldn't need to redefine words to bend their meaning. I'll get Norris to go over some of our talking points.
Yeah, so we've broken this down into sort of three main messages that sort of push back on the policy. The policy is claiming to create a safe school environment where students can learn, grow, and thrive. We know that it'll put students at risk for their safety and well-being. And sort of, there's a lot of forced outing messaging and points in the governor's proposed policy that will put students at risk. And so some of the main messages that, we encourage folks to hit on is that, all students, including trans and non-binary students, deserve a safe school environment to learn, grow, and thrive. That, the proposed policies and guidelines target and stigmatize trans and non-binary students and threaten their safety and well-being, both in school and at home. And that all students deserve the freedom to fully express their authentic selves, free from harassment. Yet Governor Youngkin's new proposed guidelines target and stigmatize trans and non-binary students, threatening their safety and well-being. Next slide. So we recognize that those are great sort of main messages, but there's a lot of supporting messaging that folks can give in response to the policy. And one is, the governor's policy really hit a lot on, parents matter. We're doing this for the families. We also want to recognize the impact it will have on student health, and then just largely schools as well, how this will impact school environments for everyone. So we can go to the next slide and talk about some talking points as it relates to impact on families. So these are some great messaging and talking points to include in, potentially your public comment if you want to talk about how this would impact families. As Kylie mentioned, there's a lot written into the governor's policy that would say, if a teacher or counselor or administrator, has a conversation with a student about gender identity, anything related to that they would be required to alert the parent, the student's parent, whether or not that student has already started to have a conversation with their family. And so, we all want trans and non-binary youth to have families that love and support them, but unfortunately that is not always the case. And adding to that trans and non-binary youth could face rejection, abuse, or worse if they are forcibly outed to unsupportive families. So again, showing the impact it would have on the family unit, and especially the student. The second point, talks to, you know, sort of all the the hoops folks will have to jump through to be, you know, have their correct pronouns and name used at school. And again, if a student has, you know, parents who are not supportive, getting that documentation from a parent could again put them in harm's way. And then this third point, you know, goes into sort of how it could, you know, impact the relationship between student and teacher, in saying that, you know, schools are sometimes the safest place for trans and non-binary youth, and that this policy would force teachers and counselors to disclose confidential records with no regard whether it puts students in harm's way. We've included some research from the Trevor Project saying that, you know, 60% of queer youth live in a home that is not affirming. So this is if, you know, you want to go and talk about the impact on families, specifically the forced outing piece, which I think a lot of folks have, you know, picked up on. It would sort of be the most detrimental to these students. You know, obviously student health will be greatly impacted, whether it is the forced outing piece, whether it is, you know, being forced to use a facility, locker room, or bathroom that does not align with their gender identity. All of those things have, you know, impact on a student's ability to feel safe and healthy, and have their well-being protected at school so that they can show up and participate in class. You know, I'm sure many of us don't really think about how having an access to a bathroom greatly improves our day. You know, imagine a student who does not feel safe going to a bathroom, and how that could impact their ability to show up and participate in class. So, you know, obviously there's a lot of mental health trauma associated with forced outing, and, you know, sharing that this policy restricts support and resources for vulnerable students is a point, you know, we recommend hitting on. We also know that schools with student groups that affirm all genders and sexual orientations have been shown to have less truancy and better health outcome for all students. And so a few supporting points for that are students who engaged more in these groups felt more validated at school, had an increased sense of safety, and were more hopeful, and that Virginia schools should seek to grow and support these groups to improve student outcomes. And then, you know, just a broad, you know, impact on what this would, you know, the impact it would have on schools broadly and how students perceive their schools. You know, we want them to perceive it as a place that is, you know, safe, for affirming, and inclusive. And so these are a few points to sort of show the impact this policy would have on schools. So, you know, that our job should be to protect every student, including trans and non-binary kids, from discrimination and harm. That school policy should focus on education, not discrimination. I've seen a lot of public comments talk about, hey, you know, we have a teacher shortage here in Virginia. We have a lot of other things impacting, you know, fully resourcing our schools. And while the Department of Education could be focusing on that, they're focusing on, you know, attacking youth. Like I said, you know, addressing learning gaps, mental health challenges that arose during the pandemic. You know, every parent hopes laws will ensure our children's safety, protection, and freedom. And then this last point is sort of, you know, going back to some of the points Kylie made about the 2021 policy, is that, you know, school divisions can and should choose to implement the 2021 policy. Those were drafted in accordance with evidence-based best practices, and we encourage folks to reject the new policies. You know, the 2021 policies were made and informed by community partners serving trans and non-binary youth, and these policies clearly weren't. we have some research as well, and this, a lot more of this research exists on that link I posted earlier, our sort of one-stop shop take action hub. But showing this proposed model policy by the Virginia Department of Education wants to truly reduce the number of accepting adults that could be in a student's life, especially at school. Students right now who have affirming teachers, those teachers and that, that acceptance does great numbers for improving mental health and physical well-being at school. We can imagine what would happen if teachers are then required to out their students, if students would, see their teachers as accepting anymore. And so having at least one accepting adult can reduce the risk of suicide attempt among LGBTQ youth by 40%. And these are some more stats on how teacher acceptance and school acceptance.
Thanks, Narissa. So moving into, a little more about the 2022 public comment period. Like we mentioned, it opened on Monday, September 26th, and it will run until Wednesday, October 26th, so 30 days. And so, during that time period, Virginia citizens will have the ability to submit written opposition to the policy. And there are two ways to do this. We're going to go over both ways, but, just some minor details about, the Virginia Regulatory Town Hall, which is where, the VDOE collects their public comment. Other agencies as well collect the public comments in response to their draft policies. So through this platform, the comments are limited to 3,000 words in length. So you can't go over 3,000 words, but you don't need to go anywhere near 3,000 words either, if you do not want to, but go for it if you would like to. And there's an editing toolbar in the actual box where you're typing your comment. So you're able to, format it there if you'd like to type it directly on the page instead of copy pasting. And you can also, link to other websites. So, some of this research we're mentioning from the Trevor Project and things like that, if you want to link that in your comment, you're able to do that as well. And you can give a comment while logged in as a registered public user, but you're also able to give comments anonymously. And, if you're commenting, trying to give a specific viewpoint from, if you're a mental health practitioner or something like that, or if you're commenting on behalf of an organization, then we would recommend that you don't do an anonymous comment, but you instead share your name and that organization. And then once, it's really important to remember that once the public comment is submitted to the forum, you can't edit it or change it in any way, and it becomes part of the official record of that regulatory action. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're deciding whether to hit submit on your comment. So, the two ways that we mentioned to submit public comment. The first is the one that I kind of just briefly talked about, the Virginia Regulatory Town Hall. And we're going to do a very brief, tutorial or overview of what that looks like. I'm about to click on the link, and I should, preface with saying that when you click this link that we're about to, that Narissa just dropped in the chat, you are able to see, at the top of the page, the first few or the most recent few comments that have been submitted. And, we just want to warn that sometimes comments that are being submitted in support of this policy can be transphobic and can be queerphobic. So we just want to warn everyone before we click on this. We're not going to spend too much time on that opening page, but it is a possibility that you could see some of those subject lines for those comments. So this is what the page looks like when you first arrive. It has all the comments. I don't want to scroll to the bottom because there's so many, it might crash. But if you are able to scroll to the bottom, when you enter this page yourself, you'd be able to see the total number of comments at the bottom. Like Narissa mentioned, it's about 30,000 right now, so it would take a while to get to the bottom of the page. So I'm just going to go, directly, just focus on this top part in this yellow box under public comment forum, where it says on this guidance document. If you click the words guidance document, that's a link to the actual document that was proposed. So if you want to kind of look at that more deeply, that's linked right there for you. It tells you, when the period opened and when it closes. And then underneath that, where there's kind of, I guess like a green dot, there's a link that says enter a comment, and that's where you would click to enter your comment. So clicking that right now, and this is what it looks like when you go to type in your comment. Like we mentioned, it's optional to give your name and organization. You can say, give an anonymous comment, but if you'd like to, that box is right at the top. You can tell where you are located. Virginia is the first choice. It gives, all of the other states, as well as an option for, Washington, D.C. and then outside of the United States. But we're assuming that most folks giving comment are from Virginia. You can include your email address if you'd like. I remember with the last public comment period for the 2021 policies, if you did include your email address, they sent you an email acknowledging your comment, and they might use it to contact you about something specific in your comment. So if you'd like to include that, you can. And then getting into writing your actual comment, like we mentioned in the subject, you'll want to say, include the word oppose in some way, shape, or form, and then as well as in the body of your comment. So this box is what I was mentioning earlier with all the different, ways to format your comment. You can type up to 3,000 words. And then when you are absolutely sure that that's what you want your comment to be, there is a submit button at the bottom. And once you click that, your comment is logged and it's unable to be changed. So now, Nerissa, do you want to go through the guide on our website?
Yeah, for sure. So we have a guide on our website that is sort of a one-stop shop. And like I mentioned earlier, we're updating this weekly as we develop more resources and we get more information from other folks. We're also using it to hopefully collect resources from a lot of the other groups out there. So, VEA has the Virginia Education Association has talking points. We want to make sure that that's included here, so that everyone can sort of just visit this one page and get as much information as you need. But this has a few things, here at the top, and these are buttons that we're updating weekly. You can click the submit public comment button and it'll take you to that town hall page Kylie mentioned. You can direct folks here if they want to RSVP for the public comment training. We'll be posting a social media toolkit soon that has graphics and sample language with all the links you need if you want to share it out on your pages. And then you can also submit an anonymous comment using our portal, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Kylie, if you keep scrolling through, this just has information on the model policy, the proposed model policy and what it does, and then goes into a little bit of a public comment guide on it. It has some of those tips that Kylie mentioned earlier. It has information on, we provide some questions that you can ask yourself as you're developing your talking point to help you sort of flesh out your answer. And it has a bunch of research from the Trevor Project on how harmful this policy would be. And then at the bottom, we also have some information on the 2021 policy if you want to, include that information as sort of why that policy was great and this policy is truly bad. But Kylie, if you want to go to the anonymous portal that we have, as Kylie mentioned, when you go to the main town hall page, you're sort of inundated with everything that folks have submitted. And that means, the great comments showing opposition to the policy, but also, the ones in support of the policies. And in some cases, folks are free to choose how they want to title their public comment. And sometimes they might use harmful or triggering language in their public comment. And so we want to recognize that folks want to be able to engage in the public comment process, but may not want to sort of be witness to all of that and be exposed to some of the harmful language that might appear on the page. And so we've created an anonymous comment portal that folks can utilize if they want to submit their public comment. You know, by default, all comments submitted through here will be submitted anonymously unless an individual chooses to have their name public when filling out the form. Folks can fill this out and it goes directly, every day we upload the comments to the town hall page. And so it's going to ask a lot of the same questions that you would receive on the town hall page, but we're going to collecting some additional information in the event that it helps with some outreach, especially if certain demographics submit public comments that might show how they might be, you know, further marginalized or harmed by the policy. And so we're collecting that information. I will say that all of this goes into a password protected database that only Kylie and I have access to. No one else has access to, and no one else will. And so this information is safe, and we don't have any use to do anything with it other than make sure that your comment is submitted in a timely manner so that you're not exposed to the other comments. We do, you know, ask for email, phone, just in case we want to follow up with you with any questions. Like the public comment page on the town hall, you can put in your public comment title, your actual public comment, and then we just ask for additional information that might be helpful on if you are a parent or educator, if you're trans or non-binary, if you're a faith leader, or if you're submitting it on behalf of an organization. And then we ask, you know, if you would like your story to be shared publicly. You know, we want to make sure that, you know, a lot of times seeing certain stories submitted via public comment can inspire others to get engaged as well. And so we, you know, would love to do a little bit of a storytelling campaign, one, to show opposition to the policy, but maybe to help inspire others to get involved or submit a public comment on their own. So we do just ask a few questions. We do ask a few questions if you'd like, if you feel comfortable with us sharing it. And yeah, Melissa, this, you know, this form, if you fill it out and you don't include your name, you know, we won't put a name, we'll put anonymous. Some folks have filled out their first and last name. And, you know, we will submit their name with that. And so I think at the top of the form, it says all comments will be submitted anonymously unless you fill out your name. A lot of folks haven't, and so we're keeping those anonymous as promised. Yeah, no problem. It's a great question. You know, as of right now, about 600 people have utilized our anonymous comment portal, and again, we're doing it to give folks another option. But really, you know, folks are, you know, might be posting hateful stuff, and we don't want to expose anyone who doesn't want to be exposed to it. I will say, in some cases, you might see some folks trolling with some harmful language and posting 20 comments with the same title. The town hall page has been doing a pretty good job of hiding those comments from public view. They are not allowed to just delete them, but what they can do is make sure that they're hidden from the general public to see them. So from what I have seen, they were a little slow the first day to sort of pick up on that. But they have been pretty quick to sort of hide those really harmful messages that are coming through that don't really have anything to do with supporting or opposing the policy. You know, they're just trying to create some drama. But this is, you know, this is the end of the public comment training. You know, we're here to help folks with any messaging as I had mentioned, we're updating that action guide every week. That Take Action Hub with talking points and additional resources. Starting next week, we'll, we've heard feedback from a lot of folks that they would love some templates on there and some more talking points. And so we're working to get those up as well so that everyone can have as much information as they need. Again, comments just need to be submitted by October 21st or 26th, sorry, when the town hall closes. And so there is time to sort of, sit and think through what you want to say before submitting it. But we are here to take any questions folks might have.
Hi, this is Stephanie in Norfolk. Can I ask a quick question? So I'm actually a member of PFLAG in Norfolk, and is it possible? And I took a couple of images of this slide. I hope you don't mind, 8 group members. Is that okay with you?
I think you cut out there, but I think your question was, is it okay if you share some of this information with your group members?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. We are also happy to do, Kylie and I have offered to do sort of private trainings with, if any of you are here on behalf of an organization, to do a training with your membership, or any group members. And so if that's of interest, please feel free to take down our information and we can set that up.
Thank you so much.
Can I just add another little point here? My name is Sarah Huber, and I have a trans child who is in elementary school. So for us, one of the issues is we cannot get a birth certificate change because our child does not meet the criteria for changing birth certificate. And I think that's something really important, is that for those children who are in elementary school, we actually cannot provide legal documentation until our child shows medical proof of transition to change that birth certificate. So I think that that's another really important point, is that we can't do anything to align gender for younger children like you can legally for older children, even with supportive, parents.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And sort of those specific policy pieces will be adding to that page we shared earlier.
Hey, Narissa, this is G. Nicholson with the Virginia chapter of Pride at Work. I had a question too. So some of the high school students that can get their driver's license, if they have the X marker that's issued through the state of Virginia, is that supportive documentation for non-binary or transgendered youth in public schools?
Sorry, say your question one more time.
Okay, students who are 16 and can drive can legally get their driver's license with an X marker on the state of Virginia now, or their chosen gender. Is that considered proof of gender in these public schools of Virginia?
Yeah, let me look into that. I think the one thing with this policy is that even if the student might have, updated documents, it still requires parental permission to use, using updated pronouns or names or gender marker. But let me look into your point specifically and I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
think we have a few questions that showed up in the chat. Narissa. Mary asked, do you believe personal stories have a greater impact? We would say yes, if you feel comfortable sharing your personal story. If you don't, obviously you can, include as much of that research as you would like, as much as those talking points that we had in our slides as you would like. But I think overall, personal stories always tend to stick with folks a little bit more. So as much as you feel comfortable sharing that, we'd encourage you to do so. And this might be a better question for you, Narissa. Is it helpful to include in a comment that the model policies appear to conflict with the Virginia Human Rights Act?
Yeah, I put in the chat that I think,
Oh.
Definitely including those points. And, we know folks have sort of a lot of those questions, and we'll be updating the guide with that. I also want to say we are moderating a panel tonight with some state lawmakers, the folks who drafted the bill that created the 2021 model policy. Atif Carney, who is the former ed secretary in the Northam administration, and then Delegate Danica Rome as well. And so we'll be talking a lot about policy pieces and the, original intent of the 2021 bill and how and if this policy aligns in any way. There's been a lot of discussion that the 2022 policy does not align with the original intent. And so is it even, sort of allowable for them to introduce it if there is an alignment? And so definitely recommend, joining us at that panel. And I think it'll be a great discussion.
I have a question. I mentioned in the chat that I work for a company that's involved in student transportation in Virginia. I'm just thinking about like specific talking points that would have impact from, I guess, kind of the business community that is involved in students' lives in Virginia. Has there been much thought put into that?
Sorry, we have, are in discussion with some businesses around Virginia, encouraging them to weigh in on this policy. We know that, equality and equity across the board, especially as it relates to, students or really anyone of any age, is good for business. And so we are pulling together hopefully a response from the business community about these policies, because the governor does, is very business minded and cares about that a lot and listens to those folks. And so we want to make sure that he is hearing from folks who are, normally and frequently in his ear. I think, in your capacity, if you want to include that in a public comment period or in your public comment, I think, that is more than fine to do that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to come from a place that would resonate,
Yeah.
With folks like the governor and their mindset. And that's not usually where I come from personally, but I'm wanting to advocate within my company, and if there's anyone else that is thinking along those lines, looking for thought partnership on that, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And we're happy to help sort of employees organize internally too, if that's something that you are interested in doing. So any other questions? Well, thanks y'all so much for joining. Like I said, that main link that main web page is something that we'll be updating weekly, and building it around a lot of the feedback we're receiving out of these public comment trainings about the resources that folks need. And so if there's something that we haven't thought of, or you think would be helpful either in your drafting, or as you maybe have conversations with your friends, families, neighbors, organizational partners, things like that, please let us know so that we can make sure that we're developing the content that's going to be the most helpful.